Greetings folks and welcome to the Electromaker Show. This is your midweek roundup of all things Maker and embedded and lovely, albeit this one is released a little later in the week because we have been very busy. You may have noticed, those who are long-time watchers of the show, that I have been missing from the Electromaker channel for a little while. And there's no particularly bad reason for this. It's mostly just down to the fact that life was very, very busy for a while, what with having 2 children and being a freelancer. I've talked about it many times before. I'm a rather time-crushed person. But also because I visited the United States of America, I went to Portland, Oregon to the Teardown event. This is Crowd Supply's big meetup of hackers, makers, and just generally interesting people who share their ideas, show their products, and just hang out and do awesome stuff. And I'm going to give a little rundown of what that event was like a little later in the show. I'm also going to give a quick index into all of the different interviews that you may have seen have started cropping up on the YouTube channel, as well as going into a couple of other things I didn't have time to cover while I was there, and maybe a couple of other normal Electromaker things if we have time for them. So, with all of that to get through, let's get on with this week's show. So, as I mentioned in the introduction, we're going to start by talking about the Teardown event that happened in Portland. And yeah, if you're not familiar, this is Crowd Supply's own event. So you're probably familiar with Crowd Supply. We talk about it a lot on this show. It is the... I tend to describe it to people as Kickstarter for people who are into cool hardware electronic stuff. But to be perfectly honest, I've sort of done them dirty by calling them that over the years, because one thing that Crowd Supply does specifically is reach out to people and help them in multiple ways to get their things out there. I can't actually remember who it was, but one of the people who I spoke to at Teardown, when I asked them, oh, can you find this on Crowd Supply? They said, oh no, this isn't actually on Crowd Supply. Crowd Supply just helped me make it, help me come up with this idea. It'll hopefully be on Crowd Supply at some point. But Crowd Supply had been involved with helping from way before it ended up on their website. So yeah, Kickstarter for cool hardware stuff is half accurate, but I've sort of done them a bit dirty by calling them that. But yes, you're probably familiar with the site. We've talked about a lot of the stuff here. And in fact, many of the things that we're scrolling past right now are people that we interviewed when we were at the event. But the event itself was really quite a wonderful thing. And it's hard for me to gather all of my thoughts together, even now, because it combines so many things that I love. So from the schedule standpoint, there was a huge amount of very interesting talks and workshops that happened. Some of them were deeply technical, how to do a specific technical thing, or talk about how someone made a specifically technical thing. And some of them were a lot more wide and community focused. One workshop I really hoped I could get to, or even just interview the person who ran it, but our times didn't quite link up, was a workshop on how to run good workshops. And the workshop had an element where they were building something, but also learning about how to actually give workshops. There was a very strong community aspect in that regard. But the event itself was in the Lloyd Center in Portland. It is a shopping mall that had an old clothes shop that closed down there. And it turns out that an old clothes shop is a wonderful place to have a meetup like this, because there were separate rooms where the talks were happening, loads of table space, and of course, really, really good lighting. It's a clothes shop after all. So there's a lot of tables set up, as you're probably seeing in the video I'm overlaying right now, and lots of very cool things to look at, and a lot of people who were just there to sit at a table and talk about the thing that they brought, which leads me on to the interviews that we gave. So let's have a very quick run through of all of those interviews, just giving a few seconds to each, and if any of them particularly appeal to you, you will find a link to it in the description that you can jump out and watch the actual video of it. So, in no particular order, I'll go through all of these in a quick fire way, and if any of them appeal to you, there'll be a link in the description to the interview and the accompanying blog post about it. And we're going to start with Modus Paper Monitor. Now, this is an e-ink driver board. It specifically is designed to work with multiple different e-ink displays, but the thing that makes it special is the ludicrously high refresh rate. They were showing films in color and black and white e-ink. They had a demonstration that shows how you can use it for word processing in a way that allows you to scroll through very quickly and still retain legible text and find where you need to be in a document, and then when it stops, it refreshes it instantly, but in a way that makes it much clearer. Next up, we chatted to Billy from Open Interface about Mini KVM, which turns any laptop into a KVM for a headless computer, be that a Raspberry Pi or some kind of x86 server box. This would be a really useful thing for home labs or even server rooms, because essentially you plug an HDMI cable and a USB cable into the Mini KVM and then plug that into your computer, and it will send over mouse, keyboard, and video and audio between the two devices. And also you have the option to have a switch on it that will switch between the USB input from the computer and a separate USB input so that you can put a thumb drive or something in it, as you're seeing in this image here. Next is somewhat of a 2-for-1, because the PowerTool 500 is something that Chloe has just launched on Crowd Supply, and Chloe showed us both the PowerTool 500 and the Flip C3, something that she'd already been working on, both of which are designed to work in battery-powered situations. They are off-grid devices. In Chloe's particular situation, she has solar panels and she has batteries, but she wants to be able to monitor all of these things in Home Assistant. So the Flip C3 is an ESP32 C3 based development board that incorporates much higher input voltage, and the PowerTool 500 allows you to monitor high voltage power in real time with Home Assistant in quite high resolution. This is just about to go live on Crowd Supply, and as with all of the things I talk about here, if you head to the links in the description, you will find the blog posts with the interviews and all of the relevant links. We also chatted with Claire, who was working with Pixelblaze at the event, and Pixelblaze is a really wonderful idea. It is, if you want to be simple about it, just an ESP32 based development board set up to work with LEDs, but in reality it has been designed from the ground up to make it very easy to get started with all different kinds of LEDs, and they have a web-based interface that allows you to either use a GUI to change the patterns, or to get inside those patterns and code them in real time. So this is live coding LEDs to do various things, and there's a really wonderful community focus around Pixelblaze as well. The idea being they're trying to lower the barrier of entry for people getting into wanting to work with LEDs, because who doesn't want to work with LEDs? They're the coolest, shiniest things that there are. It's a wonderful interview and a wonderful product, and they've just released a solderless version of the Pixelblaze, making it even easier to get started with it. I highly recommend checking them out, and once again, link in the description. We also got to speak to USDR, or micro SDR, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And this is a range of different modules designed to work as software-defined radios, but with an emphasis on making it easy to work with them. They have a browser-based GUI that makes it easy to look at everything that they can do, and there's a range of different products depending on what you want to do with them. It was a really fascinating interview with them. I had a really nice chat with them after the fact as well, and it's something that I always find interesting because, as I've said many times on the show, software-defined radios are one of the real parts of kind of hobby engineering that is just a black box to me, and I'd love to get into it one day, and it seems like USDR are really trying to make it easier for people to get involved. Continuing on with our breakneck index of interviews, Pocket PD is next, and this is one that was a bit of a surprise actually. Right at the end of the event, you can see in the video I'm no longer wearing my Electromaker garb. We got chatting to the Pocket PD people, and I just got someone literally to hold my phone while I interviewed them, and I'm so glad that I did, because this is just a surprisingly simple but surprisingly fully featured way of getting power delivery to work exactly how you want it to. You plug in a power delivery compliant charger to one side, and then you can output exactly what you want. You can set a current limit, you can set the voltages exactly, and you can charge batteries using it. But it has a number of nice things in place, like you can short it out and it's not a problem, you can just reset it and keep going. It just seems like a really nicely scoped idea, and something that a lot of people out there would probably find useful in this world, which is becoming increasingly PD compliant. We also spoke to Mehdad from UboPod, and at first glance this looks like a Raspberry Pi case, and I mean, I guess it is, but it does a lot more than that as well. He showed in the video that you can watch on our YouTube channel, or linked in the description of this video, how the case itself does a surprising amount under the hood, because it has a microphone built in, it has a camera built in, it has the OLED screen that you're seeing there built in, but from the OLED screen you can install a range of different Docker images. Docker images? Docker docs? Packets? Modules? Modules. Docker modules. But another awesome thing is that when you're working with a headless device and you want to connect it to the internet, that can be annoying. But this allows you to scan a QR code from your phone, the same way that you would share the internet between two smartphones, and connect to a wireless network that way. That's just one of a few really nice things that make this way more than a Raspberry Pi case, and something that I could see used both in sort of forward-facing public kiosk stuff in a professional way, and just a really useful way of having a headless computer at home that you can interact with without having to SSH or VNC into. One of my favorite interview moments recently has been the Slime VR interview I gave at Teardown, because I was there in Portland standing around lots of people, but I had a VR headset on and a bunch of these wonderful ESP32 based body trackers that allowed me to really inhabit a 3D space. And I gave the interview with Zedrock, or Z-Rock, who was in Hawaii, and it was very interesting. We were standing on an island with a bunch of ducks around us talking about Slime VR. It's one of the more interesting interviews I've given, and the Slime VR team have come up with something really special. It's a very community-driven idea, but this is thousands upon thousands of dollars cheaper than normal motion capture stuff. And while it gives you amazing movement in VR chat, you can get even more movement out of it for things like motion capture for game development and probably even film. And the team behind it seems thoroughly lovely as well. I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on some of my own Slime trackers and actually interfacing with VR a little bit more than I have in the past. And it was just a genuinely fascinating interview. Again, link in the description. A real highlight for me was getting to talk to Eric from Schlappy Engineering. He is behind the wildly successful 3-body Eurorack module. In the synth world, this really did make a splash when it first appeared. And from a sonic perspective, there's a bunch of different YouTubers who talk about how awesome the module is, and I highly recommend checking them out if you are into synthesizers, and especially Eurorack. But from a sort of teardown and also Electromaker perspective, what makes this really interesting is that it is a fiercely analog feeling module that was created entirely digitally using an FPGA. And we talked to Eric a little bit about that. Unfortunately, one of the things about this interview that did not work is that the demonstration that he gives during it, the sound file from the demonstration was corrupted. So the interview is great, but the sound file is corrupted. However, there is a long and wonderful demo at the end of this interview, including a moment where I have to bring the room sound back in because something that Eric did inside the module made the crazy sound of space chickens flying around. And we both absolutely lost it and laughed. And I love it when music makes you do that. And in my opinion, it's worth watching the interview for that alone. Your mileage may vary. Another highlight for me, for obvious reasons, was AudCalc, because it is a small sampler, sequencer, synthesizer effects unit, very much following on spiritually from the Teenage Engineering Pocket Operator series, something that I love a lot, but don't let its size and form factor fool you. This is more powerful than pretty much all of those things combined. This is the work of years of iteration and love from Jonathan Brodsky, who I had a chat to now, and I pronounced your name in a very European way, Jonathan, I apologize. And it's just a really wonderful thing. It's a great interview, and there's a lovely demonstration at the end, which even with my microphone held up to the little speaker on the floor of Teardown, really shows off how nice this box is. It's not available quite yet. At some point, there will probably be a production run, and I will definitely be buying one when that happens, and we'll be coming back to it on the Electromaker show. But for now, link in the description to the interview. Another interesting highlight was the Nordic Semiconductor Puzzle Hunt. Now, Nordic was one of the main sponsors of the Teardown event, and Pete from Nordic ran a workshop to get people up and running with the Thingy:91 from scratch. You install the NRF Connect SDK and get up to a point where you have the the Thingy:91, which is their cellular IoT with the NRF 9160 inside it. You get it completely up and running to the point that you can put new firmware on it. And that new firmware was put together in association with Josh, who's the one who's speaking on the microphone right now. And this was a custom piece of firmware that allowed you to go around the local area, the shopping mall and the surrounding area, to find clues geographically placed in the city. And when you get to those areas, you press a button. If you are geolocated properly, you will get the next clue on your phone, because of course the Thingy:91 can also talk to your phone via Bluetooth. It really made use of all the things that the Thingy:91 can do, and it was a fascinating thing. There is an interview with Josh and Pete that is yet to come out, but the puzzle hunt and the concept of it alone was so interesting that it's something that we're going to loop back to on the Electromaker show at a future date, and we can really dive into the idea behind it, because it's such an inspiring idea, and I hope more people come up with these sort of technology-based games that really get you out there, because it's happened in mobile apps for quite some time. Things like Pokemon Go have got people outside using geolocation as a way of gamifying their phone, but it can go much further than that, as this proves, and it was a real highlight for me. So I'll give a general overview of how the event went in a moment. But first, I'd just like to say a big thank you to the organisers of Teardown. This was the first year that Helen Lee from Crowd Supply, who you may know from Crowd Supply's YouTube channel, took over the full organisational reins of the event, and it was wonderful. It was incredibly smooth. The space was set out perfectly. Even things like the food and all of the events for everyone were just so well put together, well thought out. It was very good local food provided for everybody who came to the event. And the entire vibe of the event was wonderful. Yes, because of the community of people that were there, but also because of the space these people were allowed to inhabit together, where everyone got to feel safe and well-fed and just share nice times together. So thank you, Helen. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, everyone from Crowd Supply that made it such a memorable and fantastic fantastic event. And also, despite not being part of the Teardown team, all of the companies that sponsored Teardown, I'd like to say thank you to you for sponsoring such a wonderful event in such a hands-off way, because it was clear that various different companies had put in enough money to make this work on an individual basis with different workshops, or on a larger basis just to get the event up and running. And it really did show, but not in a way that was overly corporate or anything like that. There's nothing wrong with that, but for this kind of event, it was just very nice to see that these companies were in it for the vibe, it seems. And speaking of sponsorships, once again, it is my pleasure to say that we have got a sponsor for this episode, which obviously helps us hugely, and it is Nordic Semiconductor. Here on the Electromaker Show, we've been talking about Nordic Semiconductor's collection of Bluetooth Low Energy and more recently Wi-Fi enabled chips and development boards, along with their power profiling tools and their power management IC for quite some time, which is why I'm so happy to say that Nordic Semiconductor are sponsoring this episode of the Electromaker Show. Now, if you've been watching for a while, you're probably quite familiar with their range and what they do, but just on the off chance that you are not, then I suggest checking out the Nordic Semiconductor featured section on the Electromaker website. Here you can link to all of Nordic's different socials and of course their website, but you can also find all of the projects that have been posted to our project hub using Nordic gear, including the frankly incredible guitar active pickguard from Eli Hughes. You'll be hearing a little bit more about that from us soon, which of course uses Nordic's new NRF7002EK, which is their first step into Wi-Fi. This is an incredibly capable Wi-Fi 6 IC that can give you very high bandwidth with very low power draw, and there's a number of other advantages to it as well. It's also worth checking out the blogs section of the Nordic Semiconductor featured platform, because here we have all of the blog posts that we've put together about their hardware, but also all of the interviews we've done with Nordic staff at different conferences over the years. These demonstrations are always really, really well put together, really well explained, and they give you a great idea as to what all of this Nordic gear can do. Each piece of Nordic hardware comes with a dedicated development kit. So in the case of the NRF7002 Wi-Fi development kit, you get a development board which has an NRF5340 Bluetooth Low Energy chip on it as the host controller. But in the case of the NRF7002EK, you also get it in an Arduino form factor 3.3 volt shield, as you're seeing here. There's also an expansion board that will fit into their Thingy 53 prototyping kit. In terms of software, Nordic provide the NRF Connect SDK, which in turn is based on the Zephyr RTOS. Now, Zephyr gives you a huge amount of configurability and compatibility between various different pieces of hardware, but what the NRF Connect SDK brings is a huge amount of code samples and some really useful plugins for Visual Studio Code, allowing you to visually configure things for your board, taking some of the complexity away from Zephyr, which is a common complaint. If you would like to find out more, you can head to nordicsemi.com to find Nordic's official website, and as I previously mentioned, at the top of the featured platform on the Electromaker website, you can find links to all of these things as well. And if you're interested in getting started with Nordic product lines today, we have all of their products in the Electromaker online store, including the development kits, which, as I've previously mentioned, are a great way to evaluate everything that a piece of hardware can do, but also Nordic's prototyping kits, including the Thingy 53, which is an all-in-one Bluetooth Low Energy box, which, as you can see, if you look at the interviews on our featured platform, is ready to do Edge AI pretty much out of the box, and it's very easy to get started with. Also, the Nordic Thingy 91, which is their cellular IoT prototyping kit, is a real favorite here, and they're just about to release the Nordic Thingy 93X, which brings Wi-Fi 6 to the game and a bunch of other features as well. So, if you would like to find out more, head to the links in the description of this video or the description on the screen right now. Thank you so much, Nordic, for sponsoring this video. So yes, Teardown 2024 was just a wonderful event. I think I already said at the start of this episode, it's probably one of my favorite things I've ever been to. And I would love to give a full breakdown of my entire experience of being there and my first visit to America. But that section alone would be longer than this entire video should be, so maybe that's for another day. But what I will say is that Helen, Josh, and the rest of the team put on an event which allowed everyone to exist in the same space. Because there's always those two parts of your mind when it comes to this kind of stuff. Technical embedded stuff is very technical and embedded. And if you wanted to go to the event and just talk about specifics of the technology and get really deep with people, or even just sitting on the sidelines working on your own thing, it was set up so you could do that. There were spaces for everyone to do that. But also, if you just wanted to go there for the vibes and hang out and meet people, then you could do that too. I finally got to meet Kevin Cappuccio, who's the maker of Jumperless, that wonderful jumper wire free breadboard board that does a lot more than that, that we featured on the show a long time ago, and we'll be talking about the new version of it later in this show. And there was numerous people who I vaguely knew from the internet who I actually got to meet in person, and I just had a fundamentally wonderful experience. Everyone was very friendly, and despite the fact that I frequently feel imposter syndrome as someone who hasn't made much stuff public and doesn't necessarily have the same level of technical ability as other people, everybody feels like that. And if this event has inspired me to do one thing and one thing alone, it's to actually get involved with the community more, share my ideas, and maybe come up with something to present myself at an event in the future. Speaking of the future, whenever there will be more Crowd Supply events, we will of course be talking about them on the Electromaker Show. I highly recommend them. Once again, thank you to all of the organisers. All right, in the middle of all of the madness of being to America and me being ill for a while, there's a whole Electromaker of the Month that I am yet to talk about. Now, the winners have been notified, they know that they are winners, but I'd love to share their projects with all of you, so let's do that right now. So, a quick reminder, Electromaker of the Month is our rolling monthly contest, where every single project uploaded to our project hub gets sent to a panel of independent judges, and they will pick 3 to win. And thanks to our wonderful sponsors, Koitech, we are able to give cash prizes to all of the people who actually win these, which is a wonderful thing to be able to do. They also win a big pile of Electromaker swag as well, and Koitech swag. All 3 winners get these, but the first, second, and third place win $150, $100, and $50 respectively on top of that. And so let's look at our winners for the month of May. In first place is the Ultimate Tech Breakfast Solution, Arduino cereal and milk. And yes, it is a cereal and milk dispenser that is controlled by an Arduino, albeit one with some quite beautiful aesthetics and wonderful presentation. And of course, what with the fact that our project hub is a documentation hub, your video and written documentation is what the judges are judging these projects on, and it is wonderfully made once again with a video. Engineering dads really do make fantastic videos showing their projects. They're full of humor, they're very accessible, and this is an absolutely wonderful project. So congratulations, engineering dads. We will be getting in touch with you as to how you can get your prizes. In fact, we've probably already been in touch with you. I'm slightly behind here. In second place is a project that combines the Lark weather station, which is a very open and hackable weather station for people who want to make their own DIY solutions for it, working in tandem with an Arduino Maker 1500, I always forget the names of the different ones, Arduino Maker 1010, whatever, and it's using Qubitro as its online cloud platform. And there are many like this, but this is just a way of sending your data to the cloud and being able to visualize it. And this is just a very nice, neat but complete project that combines a really nice off-the-shelf weather-making unit with the more DIY side of how you deal with that data. I highly recommend looking through the write-up, which is very, very detailed and shows you every step you need to get started, including the Arduino code and how to get started with Qubitro. I am yet to play with Qubitro, but it does look very interesting. If you are already using a different online solution, you could probably plug that in as well. But yes, this was a fantastic project, and our judges picked it for the second place prize of $100, and of course that big pile of swag. So congratulations, Pradeep. This isn't the first time I'm seeing your name as an Electromaker of the Month winner, and that's because you continue to make such wonderful things. And in third place is the Tapewino in a Commodore cassette deck project. This is something that I have been waiting to talk about for ages, and again haven't been able to because of being absent from the channel. And I'm so glad that it won the Electromaker of the Month so that I get to talk about it, albeit briefly. So this is our third prize winner from Retro and Gaming, and it combines the Tapewino, which is a Commodore 64 emulator that works on an Arduino that fits inside a cassette tape, and then the Commodore tape player. And one of the small details here, but lovely details here, is that they got the tape counter working. So yeah, this is a Tapewino in a Commodore cassette deck. I mean, it's exactly what it says on the tin, but it's just such a lovely build. The way it all came together, it's one of those ones that just, it's satisfying is what it is. So yes, this was our third prize winner. They win $50 and a massive pile of swag. If you'd like to find out more about it, there are a couple of fantastic videos on this page as well as a great documentation of it all, which of course is what these things are judged on. So yes, congratulations, you are our third prize winner, and this is just, this one really appeals to me on a deep level, which is weird because I never owned a C64, but I guess I'm just one of those people who is a little bit of a retro fetishist after all. Anyway. This was our Electromaker of the Month winners for May. Everyone winning a big pile of Electromaker swag and Koitech swag, and of course cash prizes. Once again, big thank you to Koitech for sponsoring this. And if you would like to be a part of this, the only thing you need to do is start uploading your projects, finished or unfinished, to the Electromaker Project Hub. Now, when I say unfinished, if you have a project that has many steps to it, it might be worth waiting until you have reached somewhat an endpoint or a first prototype before sharing it, because this really is more self-contained things. Part 1 and Part 2 things are fine, but it's very difficult for a judge to ever call that a winner because it's part of a series. But the fact remains that if you are coming up with your first Arduino project that blinks LEDs in a way that appeals to you, and you want to share that with other people, and the way you document it is the way that this will be judged, you don't have to be coming up with things of infinite complexity in order to win prizes here. And the way that you put your project on the Project Hub is simply by getting a free Electromaker account, by clicking join us. It takes seconds to join, and then you can upload your projects. You can even import the projects from other sites if you've already put them elsewhere, to save you doing all of the HTML and all of the formatting once again. Now, I've covered Jumperless before, but we're covering it again because Kevin has put out a new version which really updates it. But for those of you who are coming into this project for the first time, I'll leave a link in the description to the first time I talked about it and got a little too enthusiastic about it. But in short, this is a breadboard that does not require any jumper cables whatsoever. You can plug your components into it and then use software to define the link-ups between them, but it does a lot more than that too, including current sensing. It has an ADC and a DAC on board. And the new version incorporates even more stuff. And the way that you can work with it is by using Wowkey, which is an in-browser app that uses WebUSB to talk to the Jumperless. This particular video is showing how you can actually flash the Arduino that you plug into it. This is just a regular Arduino Nano, but you can flash it from the browser using Wowkey, so that you can flash your Arduino, you can code it, and you can do all of your routing for the Jumperless all within one browser-based app. And Kevin has been working on this for a very long time to make it as accessible as possible, and I was lucky enough to actually be part of one of his workshops on the last day there when I had less filming commitments, which was putting together the new Jumperless probe. So here's an early version of the probe that I made in the workshop. It's essentially a pin, a couple of resistors and a button, and an LED that attaches back to the top of the Jumperless and allows you to probe any point in the circuit. It's just a really nice addition to the entire thing. And as I've previously mentioned, this board incorporates a lot more, and I thought now might be a good time to revisit the project and look at the new version, which is about to go live on Crowd Supply. So, Jumperless version 5. Jumperless version 5 is a breadboard where any point can be connected to any other with software-defined jumpers. RGB LEDs under each hole turn the breadboard into a display, paired with its assortment of routable analog and digital inputs and outputs. Jumperless 5 gives you real-time information about everything happening in your circuit and the ability to change it at a whim. That alone is very exciting to me, and I understand that there are people who have used the same tools for many years who are sort of perhaps a little bit reluctant to jump into something that seems to do everything, but again, having had hands-on experience with the Jumperless now, and having talked to Kevin about it, this is a real passion project, but also one that he's very serious about making good enough for everybody to use and affordable enough for everybody to use. Now, there is not a price set for the Jumperless version 5 yet, because this is a project that is coming soon, but I highly recommend coming to the page, which will be linked in the description of this video, and signing up for updates about it. Because this is a project that continues to change in ways that enhance the original idea rather than add a bunch of stuff on top of it that corrupts the original idea. And I think Kevin is someone who's very plugged into that. So the full features and specifications are available here on the Crowd Supply page if you would like to look more. As I mentioned, as well as the current sensing and the way that you can route all of your power in the LEDs, it has 4 12-bit DACs and 3 12-bit ADCs and a bunch of other things that are really useful as well. And of course, the probe, as I previously mentioned, as well. I hopefully will also have an interview with Kevin coming up at some point. We need to organize ourselves in terms of time zones, but Kevin really does describe this project wonderfully, and I think this project is coming from a really interesting place, and I really look forward to seeing when this one launches, and I hope it receives the support it deserves. Just one dude making cool stuff in a garage. Hard relate. Except I'm in an attic, and I'm not making much cool stuff. But I will. Finally, and I am aware I'm somewhat behind the curve on this, I've had this on the docket for weeks to talk about, is the PGB-1. This is the Wii Noisemakers device based on the RP2040, the second thing based on the RP2040 we talked about in this show, and there are similarities between that and AudCalc, but a lot of differences as well. But yeah, what you're hearing in the background is a rough demonstration of what this thing can do. This is somewhat of a trappy beat, but of course, like all of these devices, you are not forced into making any one kind of music with them. And the thing about this that I really like is that it is designed to be user hackable. You can hack this thing using CircuitPython, or you can get right down into the C and C++ SDK for the Raspberry Pi Pico in order to work with it. Now, as I mentioned, I'm a little behind the curve on this one. This one came out a while ago. It had a $14,000 funding goal, and they have raised almost $40,000. So this is something that will be definitely going into production relatively soon. If you are interested in taking a look at it, there are versions that go from $299 for the special with a black aluminium case, a plastic case version for $272, and various things that go with it as well. Accessories that you may or may not need depending on how many of these things you have lying around in boxes already. But yes, it's just a really wonderful culmination of all the things I love. Someone looked at the RP2040, said, I could probably make a synth sequencer, sampler type thing out of that. And they did, and made a wonderful little handheld groove box, which has, as you're seeing from this image up here, definitely the kind of buttons that the Game Boy generation might be a little bit used to. And I'm just a big fan of pocket sequencers and synthesizers in general. So, if you are interested in finding out more about this, head to the link in the description. There you will be able to find out everything you need in order to support this if you would like to. I love the... I just noticed a train ticket in the background, giving a very nice idea as to how big this thing actually is. Not much larger than a credit card. This thing has already been funded, and there are various updates coming from the team. You can, as always, add yourself to the list if you would like to. I should stop that playing in the background. And as you may see from the top here, they have now got a Rust SDK for it as well, so for you Rustaceans out there, there's something for you here too. This is one of many new things on Crowd Supply that I wish I could talk about, but this show is already stacked and probably too long, so we will be coming back to our regular funding website things section in the coming weeks, along with all of the different projects and things from Electromaker and new products. There is a wealth of things to talk about in my absence, and I look forward to talking about all of them. But yes, I am aware that this show was a little different from our normal fare, but I couldn't go to Teardown and come back without putting a little time into talking about it. It has definitely been a somewhat life-changing experience for me, if I'm being honest. I've been so focused on actually just doing work from a singular perspective, someone who is very open and loving of this community and the things that people make, but not really a part of it, you know, somewhat at arm's length. Despite being someone who can talk very enthusiastically into a camera in my attic, I am someone who in many ways finds it challenging to be parts of physical groups of people, and found myself absolutely welcomed in a way that I haven't felt in many years by this event. And I hope that I can really get across to you that it's something that I hope you get to experience as well, albeit at a Crowd Supply event or at a local event to you. If there are local hacker groups or maker spaces in your town, I highly recommend going and checking them out. There is almost always something for everybody there, and if not, that's the beauty of these spaces. You get to be the one that architects it and makes it yourself. The main thing is just vibes. Be cool, be friendly, and people will be cool and be friendly to you. Something that, despite the fact that I've spent my entire life trying to embody that, I forget frequently. That has been our show for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for sticking with Electromaker for so long, and of course through my occasional absences. We are pretty much back on a regular schedule now, though. There will be Electromaker shows and various Electromaker videos coming out on a more or less weekly basis for the next while. And I am very interested to hear what you thought of the Teardown event and the things that we covered in it. It certainly felt a little bit different to me than covering things like the embedded world and the more corporate focused and business focused events that we do. do. Those things are wonderful, and I really do enjoy doing them, but this had a very different vibe to it, and it certainly appealed more to me in my history of kind of hacking and making stuff, completely self-taught in my bedroom over the years. And I'm really looking forward to going to similar events like that and covering them for Electromaker, and maybe even taking something of my own that I've been tinkering with in the background for years and finally showing it to other people, which I know there's many of you out there in that situation too. I highly recommend, even if it's not finished, sharing it online. If there's one thing I took from Teardown, it's that these are people who come together to try and help each other realize their ideas. And once you share your idea, then you're more likely to find someone who will help you with it than critique it in a way that will hurt you. Anyway, with that said, I look forward to chatting to you very, very soon. Thank you for all the support you're showing us, whether it's by buying stuff from the Electromaker store or just liking this video on YouTube. I hope you're having a safe, fun, and creative week, and I'll chat to you soon.